there's a statute on the book that says for emergency registration. It's related. It basically says if you walk into the clerk's and recorder's office and you claim that you went to a voter registration drive and you can sort of say roughly when you did it and where it was, if you say that, they'll say, well, okay, they must have lost it or something, and we'll let you vote. All right? The reason that came about is because you had all this fraud, I think, in voter registration, and you had groups who were sort of going around collecting voter registration cards, and then someone would be on the wrong party, normally Republican, and they'd throw that away. So people wouldn't get registered when they thought they did. So that was an emergency thing. That made sense then. Well, since then, we've passed a law that says you always have to include this stuff. Well, there's a debate about that. And Bob Bailing said, look, you know, I was here in El Paso, and I had these people come into my office and, you know, ask questions about this. And sure enough, 3 days or a week later, I forget exactly what he said, I had like 30 or 40 people all of a sudden come in and claim that they had gone to this voter registration drive. Very suspicious activity. Do we know how many people on a statewide basis use this law? Do we know how these excuses work? Has anyone investigated this? No, not at all. So part of it's a see no evil, hear no evil. Part of it's a partisan debate. And part of it is people just don't want to spend the time getting to the bottom, doing the hard, unglamorous work that it takes to make sure we've got a good system. So you were an election judge and you saw some of that.
A lot of provisional ballots and I was supposed to be registered, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was only in one voting precinct, not even countywide.
Well, and you know, sometimes that stuff's valid. You know, you said, you know, provisional voting. Sometimes that's absolutely valid. Sometimes it's not. You know, and so you got to look, you know, review the election and see if there's a pattern of suspicious behavior. And if there's not, everything's good. And if there is, you'd need to look into it. Yes? So the question is, what's my stance on vote centers and all-mail balloting? I'm fine with vote centers if they work. Okay, now, when I say if they work, I think that's sort of up to the clerks and recorders in each county. Some counties it makes sense, some don't. I think there's some evidence that vote centers are more expensive. If a county wants to pay for that, they're welcome to. Denver tried vote centers, failed miserably at it. Larimer has done vote centers, they've worked pretty darn well. I think you just, as long as you meet minimum standards of access so people can, you know, you can't have one vote center for all of El Paso County, you know. I mean, you have to have enough vote centers and all that. So if people, you know, if it's open access and you've got the protections in place, I'm fine with them. And if someone doesn't want to have them and use traditional precinct voting, I'm fine with that too. So either works. All-mail ballots, I'm not a fan of all-mail ballots. Now, we're headed to some degree in that direction here in Colorado. We've got lots of absentee ballots, which are basically mail ballots. And there have been so many regulations and nitpicky stuff for clerks and recorders that our costs for elections have skyrocketed. And some of the clerks and recorders are saying, look, this is crazy. You've driven up my costs. You've made this a regulatory nightmare. Let's just do all-mail ballot, and it'll be a lot easier. They've got all-mail ballot in Oregon. Very little evidence on how well or how poorly it works. There is something in the literature that says all-mail ballots reduce voter turnout rather than increase it. There's some literature that says it increases it. I'm not a fan of it because when you send out that many live ballots, it creates potential for tampering. And then also, there's still a lot of people who want to come in and vote on election day, and I think we need to provide that option. Okay. The question is, what do you do to reduce some of these costs for the counties? Look, I think the answer is pretty darn simple. Stop over-regulating. Okay, this election machinery issue, there's like a 36-page bill that just came across. And every time a county wants to, you know, move an election machine 2 feet over, I'm exaggerating, it's not that bad, but every time they want to add something to a machine or tweak or do something, they have to get permission from the Secretary of State. That's just going to grind the process to not quite to a halt, but it's going to slow it down and increase your costs for both the counties and for the clerk and recorder. I mean, the certification nightmares that we've gone through for the electronic machinery has been crazy. I think we ought to be able to, the mandates, we've got like 4 or 5 voting systems. We've got absentee, we've got same-day voting. A lot of times we have both electronic machinery in same-day voting and paper ballot in same-day voting. And then we also have early voting. So, I just gave you 4 different systems that have to be operated for voting. And that drives costs up. Look, I'm a Republican. I honestly believe that clerks and recorders have a job to do, and you should let them do their jobs if they're doing a good job. And so you have safeguards in place and precautions, but you don't over-regulate them. And that's exactly what's happened. And that's why I think the costs have gone up something like 2-3-fold in the last 10 years. It's outrageous. It is outrageous. One more question. Yes, sir. I wouldn't even venture a guess on that. Okay? A lot of what I've seen, if you sort of look at the literature and things like that, voter fraud, when it gets revealed, is usually revealed in a primary context, a primary election. And Republicans engage in it too. This isn't just a Democrat thing. Republicans engage in it too. So basically the bad guys are in one party or another, and then the knives come out and they knife one another, and then it spills out. That's how a lot of times it gets revealed. So I'm not sure how much of it is an actual Democrat versus Republican issue, and I really couldn't guess. I'd be surprised if it were as high as 3%. I think it's, to the extent that it's a problem in the close cases, and we just don't have the evidence because we've not looked for it in different areas. I think it's out there. I've talked to clerks and recorders who firmly believe it's out there, and they work to mitigate it. I don't know if it skews one way or the other. Okay. So, let me at least make one pitch. I am a candidate. I'm the only Republican candidate. I expect I'll only be the only Republican candidate. I need help. I need help from you all. Come to my website, scottgessler.com, and I'll also say, Obama built a machine on $20, $50, $100 donations. And the way you can get involved along those lines is, I would disagree, you are going to read about election stuff in Colorado. There's going to be a story in the newspaper tomorrow about some of Ritter's nefarious dealings. And hopefully I'll get quoted. We'll see on that one. I think there's going to be a story. But you're going to read about this. And when you see stuff that you don't like, help me out. Send me a $20 donation. I know that's self-serving, but it's also true. Because the Democrats will learn that every time they try to skew the election system, every time they put together a bad policy, Republican grassroots are going to help their people out, and there's going to be a price for the Democrats to pay, whether it's my race or other races. And so when the Democrats do something and the Republicans turn around and say, thank you very much, you just helped me get $20,000 that I'm going to use to beat you up and hold you to account, that's going to give them pause. And that's something you can do now. And it's not going to bust the bank. A bit each time is a huge help. So I need your help on this stuff as well, because elections here matter. And they will matter, and they'll continue to matter in Colorado immensely. So thanks very much for your time here.